Hello! Sorry for the little pause there, just getting myself all sorted. And obviously it's the top of a stream, so I need to check that the sound's working. Pause there, just getting myself all... Wow, I am a loud person today. Let me just make that a little less aggressive. Wow, I am a loud person today. Let me just make that a little less aggressive. Okay, if you are watching and things are a bit crunchy or I'm getting quite loud or anything like that, then do just say in chat and I will adjust my sound settings. So far this setup has worked fairly well, and obviously I'm using a different setup for subtitling today. I'm using the Google Meets subtitles. I don't think I've updated that in my Nightbot thing, so that will still reference Web Captioner. Hi Ro. But yes, I'm using different subtitles because I've finally had the time to do experiments on different forms of captioning, especially the ones that I can use in my musical streams. And so this is my current setup for today. But again, if there's any issues with those, just flag up in chat. So for anyone who's new to this is a relatively new stream. This is only the second in this series. And the idea is it's just giving an introduction on how to use Twine, which is some free software. If you just go to twinery.org, you can download it. You can use it on Macs, you can use it on PCs, you can use it online, but for various reasons I recommend downloading it because you can save stuff and it's a bit more secure than just doing it all on the online interface. But this is just an introductory stream on how to use it, because if you are a self-taught coder like myself, then you kind of have to just search all over the internet to figure out what is going on and what you have to do and how to use things. So this stream is an attempt to bring a lot of that stuff to one place, and also in a setup, sorry, they say remembering that they should actually have their streaming laptop charging so it doesn't just bamf out halfway through. Yeah, this is just having everything in one place, and also in a setup where, because we've got chat, if you have any questions, feel free to ask them during the stream. My standard kind of caveat is I have been paid to make games in Twine. The majority of the last 4 months I have been coding stuff in Twine, but I am still a self-taught coder. I am not a formally trained coder or anything like that. So I can tell you how things work, I can show you how things operate and what to do and workarounds and stuff. My knowledge isn't encyclopedic, but I can show you a lot of things, but it will still be how I figured out how to do them. But it also means I don't talk with that much jargon because I just can't. So I'm going to do a quick recap of last fortnight's stream, which was the very early introduction, and then we're just going to kind of blaze on with some other bits and pieces. If you do want to be able to see the last stream, then there is something in chat, but I'm just going to put the link in again, and that will take you to last week's stream. So already got my Linton Travel Tavern t-shirt on, which I love so much. So the first thing is just generally navigating Twine. I'm currently using it on a PC, and I'm not using the most up-to-date version of Twine because I've had an older version on and I've been working on projects and I haven't updated it, but it will look pretty much like this. What you actually see when you first open it is this. You see some different stories, which is basically the game, individual games you're making. You've got places where you can add a story, you just give it a name and it will make up one of these things. Then if you click, it takes you through. These little squares are what you call passages, and a passage is just a discrete location where you input text. When you highlight passages, you have options to delete them, you have options to edit them, you have options to play from that point in the game, and you then have a couple more things here. Like I say, I'm just doing a kind of a sketchy recap, so I'm not going to go into those details, but I do on other bits and pieces. Sorry, phone going off, and it's very rare that my phone ever is used as a phone. So some slightly sketchy details, but if you want to know the full details, where I also talk about like why you might want to do XYZ with something, why you might want to play from a particular point in the game that isn't the actual start of the game, then just check out the earlier stream. You can see that there are some kind of arrows that go between some of these. That's because they have links between these passages. So you have passages, which are where you have the text, and you have links, which is how you get from one set of text to another. For instance, here we've got the very classic form of link, which is 2 square brackets, and that's also a kind of link that creates this line, because we also have some other types of links that we went over. We've got square brackets but with an arrow made in the middle, which means that you can have the same text show to the player, but actually it's going to a different passage, which sometimes is just good for keeping things neat. Sometimes there are really specific reasons you might want to have that variation. Sorry, some of these are struck out because we also looked a little bit at formatting text. You can see there's also other types of link where you actually have link colon what the link is and then saying go to this place. This next one, anyone who saw the first stream will know that I went, oh, this is acting a bit differently on Windows. It's not. It's because I did a typo. Last week what I typed in was this, which I think was just a hangover from doing the link one right above. But this is that. It's been corrected in the description of the YouTube video as well. So don't worry if you're like, you think you need to come back here to look for the correction. So you have that one, which is a different form of clicking. And something that I kind of pointed out in the last stream is that if you are using the link colon version or the click colon version, which is basically using go to as a command, that doesn't create the lines. Just in case you're ever looking out for that kind of thing. So, sorry, I'm still just like checking that the subtitling is working as I want it to, and everything's... Sorry, I'm still... My voice is coming out real crunchy, and I don't know why. I'm just going to double check that I'm on the mic that I think I'm on, because I've been having a lot of fun with sound on OBS lately. Oh my god, have I ever. I'm just making sure that everything is kind of lined up and every single thing that I can see. Yeah, just like my sound mixer options, every different potential thing. I've been getting really into all of the things that this laptop does in terms of sound. I don't know if that's going to have improved it. Let's just double check, see if I sound a little less crunchy. To my ear, I sound less crunchy. Maybe that's fixed it. So yes, that's kind of the very fundamentals. I also talked very briefly, I mentioned the style sheet, which we're going to do today. And also story format, which if you're joining today is like a very important thing to be aware of. All of this that I do on these streams applies to Harlow, which is one of 4 story formats that you can use in Twine, which basically means the different types of kind of coding language that you need to use. Harlow is the default. If you download and open Twine, that's what it should open up on. But just if you're ever looking for help, if you're ever Googling for information, you'll want to specify like how to do this in Twine in Harlow, because a solution in SugarCube is not going to help you in Harlow. So I think that's a very quick like things that we looked at. We looked at also a little bit at how to like make text bold, make it italic, make it struck through. And so that's actually where we are going to pick up, is from just doing a little bit on formatting text. Most of this session is going to be about kind of customizing visuals and doing a little bit on sound as well. and then we'll start getting onto the more intricate bits of coding. But yes, this next little bit is just going to be about how can you format text, because without any kind of formatting, I'm just going to show you what, actually that's not a great one because that's only got links. I'm just going to show you what it can look like online. So when you press play, it'll bring up a little web browser, and this is the default settings. It's the black background, white text, blue text for clickable links. Now all of this can be changed, the font, the size, everything. So I'm just going to show you a little bit of how to do those things. Also going to go to a slightly zoomed in version of Twine here. So what we were using was we've been doing this as like a, let me just see if I can position this a little bit better so that you can actually see all of the passage that I am working with here. I've got so many window captures up in this OBS setup you would not believe. Okay, so now you can see it a little bit more. This is what happens if you open it up and a passage is empty. So I'm going to show you how to change things within a passage, and then I'm going to show you how to change things throughout the game, because basically if you want, you know, the color of text in a single passage to be orange, there's a way of doing that. If you want it to be orange for all the text in your game, there's a much easier way of doing that than changing it in every passage. So, and we were doing this as like a make a cup of tea generator. So I'm just going to go put the kettle on, then wait. The water's boiled. Further down the line, we'll do timed text that kind of shows up, which might make more sense with like waiting for the kettle to be on. But so you'll recognize this from the kind of link colon and the click colon instructions and code that we were using earlier. But what you can do here is text color orange. At the moment, I'm just going to use generic orange. I'll explain a little bit why there might be differences there. But here, if I do text color, let's go royal blue, because that's also another good thing to explain. So hopefully, if I now just play this particular passage, what you can see is first line comes up in bright orange, next line comes up in blue. So that's how you change the color of an individual section of text. You can do that over longer lines. I don't want it to seem like because of how I've done it. It's simply any text that is in between these two square brackets is now going to be orange. Any text that is in between these two royal blue brackets here is going to be royal blue. So if I just wanted to make the entire thing orange, then what I would do is take out all of that. And you can see like the slight color change that this is now very faintly backed in cream, because that's one of the ways that Twine is really useful and shows you that your instruction has actually been recognized. That gives you a little bit of feedback to say, I know that you want to make this text orange, for instance. Now, here, obviously, I've put just the word orange, and earlier I had text color royal blue. I am using the American spelling color because that's what I found to be most reliable. So obviously there is a little bit of a question of what colors can you actually have? What can be useful is either if it's just like a very generic color name like green, blue, yellow, you can put that in, that will be fine. Otherwise, you either need the, I think it's hexadecimal version, which if you ever use something like GIMP or Photoshop, you'll be familiar with. It's like a hashtag and then 6 numbers or letters. Or I found out this was royal blue by Googling and finding out what computer language there was for this particular color that I had. However, there is a useful website that I'm going to pop into chat right now. When I've got everything up, where you can actually just search, because definitely, especially when you're changing all of the color in a game, you are gonna need to find the text code of colors. So you would use potentially a website like this one, colorhex.com, and that will actually help you to find out what you actually want to put in. So we've got orange, we've got royal blue, and let's just try something on color hex. I'm just gonna find a random color, because I feel like I shouldn't just assume that this is definitely going to work how I think it is, because I don't tend to change the color formatting of my games that much. Sometimes that's just from a creative standpoint, that the projects I've worked on, that's what's been best. And then other times it's more of an accessibility issue. Okay, that's not quite functioned as I would have expected, but basically you're fine if you're using text and just saying royal blue, orange, and we're going to save the hexadecimal stuff for changing everything. But yes, something that is useful to remember is that obviously you want a really strong contrast between your background and your foreground, otherwise it's going to make it really hard for people to read. And in a text adventure game, that's a big issue. So something just to keep in mind. Now, there are obviously other ways to format things. You can also change individual fonts. So if you then have font : and then I'm just going to put this because I'm pretty sure this computer knows this. Let's just bring this up. And I'm going to show you what that looks like. So you can see that the middle line where I've put font : speech marks courier now has a different font. Now, with fonts, the reason I've used courier as an example is because it's very common. Like, I know that this browser will be able to show courier. I know that the computer recognizes it. Sometimes you'll need to do a bit of fiddling if you want to use more unusual or less common fonts. However, there is a way you can do that. If you're like, I really want to use this font. I know that this definitely works for using things from importing fonts from Google Fonts. Now, this is going to seem a little bit more scary what I'm about to show, but I promise it's very much a thing where as long as you just follow the steps, you're going to be fine. So let's come back into Twine. So we're going to start using the style sheet. You can just see that I'm here second from the top. And so the style sheet is where you change things across a game. But I'm just going to copy this code in. So we've got @import URL and then little quote marks around a URL. Now, this URL right here is just where I found a font on... Ooh. Why are you bringing up something different than the last time I looked at you? Basically, I'm gonna make sure that this is, because this works in the other things that I've got. There were so many things that I prepped for this morning. I'm just like, what's going on? Anyway, let's just, for the moment, we're gonna fly with this. So we've got this, which is from Google Fonts, and it's for .gothic16, and this is a way of importing this into the game, which should make it possible if I close this and then I go here, .gothic16, I think it was all one word. I'm just going to double check, is this called all one word? Yes, it is. So I've put .gothic 16, which is the import one. And then if we look at what it looks like, you can see it's got a different text. So if you've got something, especially from like Google Fonts, this is the only font place that I've tried this format with. But it does mean that kind of anything on Google Fonts you can pretty easily bring into the game. And the reason that I use something like Google Fonts is because you want something that you know pretty much any browser is going to be able to find and recognize. So I will, a few things, if there are some things that I'm skating over a little bit, because I don't want to do a big troubleshoot during the stream, then I will make sure that there's clarifications under the YouTube videos of this. So you'll be able to like look down now and see my explanation about that URL and the use of that URL. So we're going to go back into Twine. So we've done changing like individual fonts, we've done changing individual colors. If you want to change things like the size, how I tend to do this personally, if I'm doing just individual pieces and I want to change the size of them, I use the header method, which is, I'm not used to this keyboard. I usually work on my Mac, but my Mac is not good for streaming, shocker. I'm just going to put a few hash tags in front of some text, and basically the more hashes, more hashtags. I don't know, why does saying hashtag in full sound like very boomerish? The more hashtags, the bigger. Or no, the smaller. The more hashtags, the smaller. The more hashtags, the smaller. So you can see this looking incredibly dramatic because we've got 5 hashtags at the top, 3 in the middle, 1 at the bottom. To be honest, when you've got 5 hashtags in, it will make it bold, but it's basically the same size as normal Twine text. But you can see it starts to look a little bit more interesting because you've got different sizes. You'll notice also that this is one of the things where you're not having to put in like little square brackets. It's just in front and it will affect that line because it's intended for use as headers and that kind of thing. And I'm also going to show you just now, because you might at times not want everything to be on the left hand side, how to align things. So if you just want all of your passage to be on the left or on the right or in the center or justified, you can just do this at the top. You make series of arrows with basically equal signs and greater than, larger than signs. So what I'm hoping is this should put everything that we've got in the center. So you can see everything is now centralized. But you might still not want everything to be in the center. And the one thing I will say about when things are centered in Twine is that it's very difficult to control how long that line is. Like you can see the water's boiled is all on top of each other, rather than being in the center but being long. So that is the one thing about when you're centralizing text in Twine. Often it will result in like quite short or like kind of small widths, which might not be what look you want. Back to, I've got so many window captures. If, however, you want to change like individual parts, how I tend to do that is, again, we're going to do kind of instruction colon in curvy brackets. And then it's using that same instruction again, that same kind of use of symbols. And we can see that it's happy with that because it's a nice kind of purpley shade. And we've got to put the square brackets around this. Just something to flag. If I had that and I'd mistyped it, if there was a typo and it basically wasn't, I typed in something that wasn't an instruction that Twine understood, it would be highlighted in orange like that. That's just a really useful thing again, Twine feeding back as to whether you're doing something right or whether you're doing something it doesn't understand. And so now if we open this up, you can see that only the top line is actually centralized. And I'm just going to roll through the other things that you do for left, for right, and for justified. So if you wanted something to be left, then it's just an arrow and such, like pushing it to the left. And I'm sure you can imagine that it's the opposite if you want it to go to the right. And then if you want it to be justified, it's just basically pushing outwards to the edges. Obviously, I don't know if we'll see big effects from justified with only a couple of letters. I'm just going to do it with a longer sentence so you can really see it. The water's boiled. Oh my God, this is a big deal to be having tea in real life with a human person in flesh space. Flesh space is what I call, the physical realm that is outside my flat. Okay, you'll see something interesting here. So we've got one at the top, we've got one at the side, and then my water's boiled. You can see that I understand that it looks like it's just crammed at one side. You can see that it's trying to justify, and it's just because I've got my window kind of a little bit contracted to fit into this Twine screen and to this overlay for the Twine stream. But you can see how it is actually justifying this text. So we've done a bit on individual colors, individual sizes, individual alignments. I'm going to double check, but we're probably now going to go on to changing everything. If we want to change everything. But is there anything major that I was going to talk about? No, I reckon we're good. There's a few, if you search kind of for the Twine wiki or twinery.org, it will give you some more instructions on, how to do the crossing out and the bolding and upside down and things like that, what we kind of semi-covered last week. Again, I mentioned earlier that in future sessions we'll do timed text, and we will also do transitions for text, because there are transitions where you can make text fade in or kind of shudder in and out or do more visual things like that. And for instance, it's the kind of thing that I've used in Twine games for puzzles, where it's like if you press something and it flashes a number of times to send a message. However, that's a little bit much. We're still trying to keep it kind of simple for now. And that involves a bit more understanding of like timing things in Twine. So we're going to have a look at how you change things entirely. And to change things entirely, you go to the story sheet. So again, second from the top, story sheet, where we've got our imported URL. Now, if you want to change the text, then you copy in something that looks like this. I'm just going to take out those spaces. It doesn't make a difference, but I just prefer it. So here you've just got font family and then the name of the font. You can still have the imported font up here, and then you have the same font here. So let's just show that, .gothic 16. Font size, this gives you obviously a little bit more finessed control over the font size rather than using headers. I mean, it's just how I personally do it, because to be honest, obviously Text Adventures, one of the benefits is you can zoom in and zoom out if you need to. And then color, this is where hexadecimal comes in, because I always use, whenever it's a style sheet, I use hexadecimal colors. And so this is just a sample of a couple of things you can have. It needs to have body and TW story at the top, if you forget those bits, it's not going to work. It's very much, there are some things in Twine where it's just, you just learn exactly what you copy and what bits within that you change. And again, underneath the YouTube video, I will try to put like the exact things that you can copy. So just as an example, I'm going to show you how that's changed the appearance of the game. It's this back, of course. So right now, what it's done is you can see that the text is a bit smaller because that 18 point, and also you can see that it's all that kind of slightly 8-bit pixelated style of text, and I've not had to do anything in the passage to change that. In the passage, it still is just plain text. The colors, the color of the link hasn't changed because links are a different thing. They're treated as something different in Twine, and you have to change the color of the links separately, which is what I will show you next. There's a chance that I used a really faint color for the text that isn't sufficiently different to white. So let's have a little look at that. Let's go back into the style sheet, because I know that some of the trials that I was looking at earlier, it wasn't changing enough for me. But let's see if we can get the link to show. Also, if this is my fault for like doing prep on a Mac and then streaming on a on a HP laptop, I mean, I deserve this, right? So we've got this, which is TW link. So it affects the color of clickable links if you want to change that in your game. And again, it's just color, favoring American spelling. And then it's whatever this hexadecimal, I really feel like it's hexadecimal. There's a chance I've just like heard that on an episode of Red Dwarf or something, and I'm using entirely the wrong thing. But again, it's the code that you'll get if you search for something on a website like color-hex.com. Let's just go from the start of the game. This is what I meant when I said about accessibility. So you might just be able to see, yeah, if I put my cursor over it to actually click on, because again, the color changes when you hover over it to give feedback to the player. So you can see this is now like a very dark brown. And if I go to any others, again, all of the links now initially present as dark brown. But it makes it really hard to read. So that kind of shows you how you can change the color of links in whichever way you might want to. Let's just you know what, I'm just gonna try this because I might have just picked a color that's too similar to white, so it's not showing up as different, just to demonstrate that that code does function. Hey, we have an almost unreadable screen, which means it's worked. So it's all of the text shows up as a horrible brown that is too similar to the black. However, obviously what we can do now is change the color of the background, and that will help the color change to the text make a bit more sense and be a bit more easy to deal with. So here we have some text that we're going to copy in. Again, going to the style sheet, bringing that up, putting this in. Again, we've got body and TW story, body and TW story. There were some tutorials that I was looking at briefly when I was making sure I had this code ready, because this is not, style sheet code is not the code that I remember off the top of my head. It's the code that I have to look for and copy. And some tutorials didn't have this. They just had body and background color, and that does not work. It needs to know that you're talking about the story, the game. And so background color, I just copied this in separately, but obviously because we've got body and TW story up here, you could also just put this bang in there, because it's exactly it's talking about exactly the same thing. And we've got background dash color and this. So let's see. Throw the game up. Haha. You can see, I mean, it is, I don't think it's the prettiest color scheme in the world, but we've now got what is kind of dark brown, but obviously looks almost black against this bright turquoise background. And it's affecting the entire game. So that is some like very basic bits about how you change everything in a game, or how you change individual little bits in individual passages. And basically it's just putting things in the style sheet, or putting things in curly brackets before your text, and then putting your text in square brackets. So we're gonna move on to something else. We're going to move on to how to add images, because sometimes you might want there to be visuals that people can actually look at. Now, some of this is going to sound a bit more fiddly, but again, what I promise is the truth, is that provided you just kind of copy and paste and follow the steps, you're going to be okay. You're going to be fine. So let's make a passage, and let's just, go, would you look at this cup of tea? Again, the games that I make are normally not just like solely about making cups of tea. And then there is a piece of code that it's very much, this is what you copy and you put in. So we've got a couple of things to teach here. Some teachable moments. I've copied this over from like a notepad app, and what it has done is make these speech marks curly, and Twine will not recognize those. It won't view them as actual code. It won't enact anything that relies on them. It will mess up all of your code. So you do have to go in and change them to straight ones, because when I started out, the number of times that was the issue that was like stopping me being able to do things in games. Now, obviously here I've got web link in big capital letters, and that's not the actual code. But this is what you want in order to put an image in. And then you have to get an image that is hosted online. Now, there are two options for this. Either you find an image that is already hosted online. Obviously, use things you have a legal right to use. Don't just go and steal other people's images to put in your Twine game. That's not me endorsing this. But either you find something that is already hosted online, or you host an image yourself. But what you have to do is find the exact location of that image on the internet. Not the page where it comes up, but the exact location of it. I'll show you what I mean. So we're just going to go to Google. And oh no, sorry, I didn't realize it was just going to bring up like searches with my issues with OBS sound this week and apple pies. I feel like that's very representative of my life is only tech and baking right now. Okay, we're going to plan what we type before we actually open this up. I'm going to just go cup of tea. And we're going to search, we're just going to go, would you look at this cup of tea? This one's quite pretty. Let's see if we can find the actual link for this. So, okay, I've never actually used this particular function before. I just want to see if it's the same thing. Okay. So we've got copy image link, which I'm presuming is this particular link. You can only see the image on this page. This is the place on the internet where this image exists. This is just a web page it is hosted on. And so what you want is the link where the image exists. Now, I'm going to just paste this in here. Okay, that looks interesting. I normally do it hosted myself, which I can show people if they need to be shown that. So a couple of things to note. This is something you can change. Just realised I'm still showing you a picture of a cup of tea. Great work. Right, I'm just gonna Control Z so I can show you that again. So in where I've got web link, I'm just gonna paste that link. Right at the end here, you'll notice there's W equals 750. That is, width is 750 pixels. So that's how you can control exactly how big or how small something is going to show up. It's worth considering where you expect people to play this game, because obviously if you dictate a certain width, it's going to present differently on a phone or on a tablet to a laptop. I typically design games that are for laptops, so I might try it on like my streaming laptop and my kind of other work laptop. But yeah, 750 is a default that I currently go to, because again, if it's a picture that you've got there for a puzzle, people need to see it in detail. If you don't want it to take up a huge amount of space, you can make it a lot smaller. But just to note that this is something you can change. So I'm going to see if this has come up as I would expect in the game. It's great when things actually work the way you want them to, isn't it? So now you can see we've got, would you look at this cup of tea? It's a good cup of tea, right? The reason why I was like not 100% and I was just checking that would definitely work as I was expecting it to was this question mark. Just because you always want it to end with a question mark. And sometimes when you copy the link, it's already got a question mark and you need to just make sure that you're only ending with one question mark. And I was just making sure that this little section here wasn't going to get in our way. So for instance, just to show you about changing the size of things, if I take that down to 300, then it's not showing as radically different because it's still cutting it off. But trust me, that is how you change the sizes, how you change the widths. It's also because I've got a lot of my windows right now are compressed, and so everything is already kind of being squidged down into certain sizes and shapes. However, this single thing, this little bit of code will sort you out for putting images in. And to be honest, thankfully, the next thing that we're going to look at is really similar. What I will just very briefly say is if you want to host your own images, because, you know, that's how you need to do it, because you've got ones that are yours but aren't on the internet yet. How I do that is I have a WordPress site and I will make a page on that site. I will set it to private so that it's only ever visible by an admin or an owner. And I also will make sure that it's not included any menus, it's not linked to anywhere on the site. It's basically like a little isolated place. If you upload an image to that, and then again you do that kind of right click, open image in new tab, that will generate the website that you need. I'm not signed into my WordPress on this laptop, but that is the order of how you would do that to host something yourself and to generate that link. You would go to your own website, make a page that is private and isn't linked to, can't be seen by anyone else, so you don't just have a random page of stuff on your website. Upload an image, go to that page, and then press right click, open image in new tab. And that would give you, again, the link that you need to do this. So what we're going to look at next is adding sound. Now, because we're still quite early days, this is going to be a very simple form of adding sound. In a later stream, I will be showing you how to add sound so that it plays throughout the background of your entire game. So it is just like background music and it doesn't update with every passage you go to, so that it's just nice, smooth background. music or background soundscapes, whatever you want. However, that is one of the more complicated things. It just involves a lot of copying code in and setting things up with tags and stuff like that, which we haven't even gotten to. But what I can show you right now, because it is very simple and very similar to how you do images, is adding individual sounds. So the code that you'll want with this, you'll see that it looks a little bit similar, is audio SRC rather than im SRC, web link, and then autoplay. So again, this is a case of just finding the sound, the music, the track, and getting that specific link to it. Now I haven't actually done this anywhere except on a place that I have hosted. I'm also just realizing now that my OBS sound, I'm going to have to change it so that you will actually be able to hear things. Right, what I'm just going to do is bring up, I'm going to bring up. I'm going to see if this is possible with some tracks from a musical that I really like. Oh wow, there are way too many people with this name on here. Okay, we're leaving this place. Let's see what I can do here. Yeah, that's not the right password. Okay, right. Because again, I don't want to just be like searching for something during this whole thing. It is exactly the same, I promise. You find the audio, you open it up in a new tab. You know what? The one place that I might actually have something that I can show you, because I would still rather show than tell, always. So this is me just like having a little shifty around in my private Google Drive. And just seeing if I've got any MP3s kicking around here, because Google Drive should give me something. Right, I think what I might do is I will do a little recap of this in 2 weeks' time just to show you all the steps, but it is exactly the same. As long as you've got this different code around the web link, you find this is why it is easier if you have it as something that you're hosting yourself, because sometimes it's a little bit hard to actually get hold of those links from other sites. So you upload your own audio, you right click to get to the audio in a new tab, you copy that web link, which is where solely that audio exists online, and then you just paste it in here. With this setup, what it means is when you play this passage, it will just play once. It will just basically play that file, play that audio once, and then it will stop. There are ways that you can do looping, and obviously, like I said, I'm going to look at longer periods of having music and sound playing in the background in later streams, but they're a little bit more complex. This is one of the places where apparently this is why some people favor different story styles, like story formats like Sugar Cube, for instance. But I'm just going to show you one other little thing in terms of adding sound, because you might not want the sound to play the moment that you open a passage or someone enters a passage. You might want it to be in response to a specific thing. So for instance, and this is just using the click command, the click function that we used right in the first session, so it's nothing majorly new. let's say, pour some tea. If we had like a sound effect of some kind of glug or something, we're going to call that glug. And then we're going to go click glug, because you always have to name it the little kind of like tag that you've got at the end, not the text that the players are actually seeing. Here is the sound of a glug. But if you include the audio in that, what this would mean is that if we open up this, it's framed very ugly, but I'm trying to capture so many different things in this. Would you look at this cup of tea, pour some tea, here's the sound of a glug, and that's where the glug would actually show. So you can tie sounds to very specific actions in game, and you can tie sounds to individual passages, and you can do it as background, but that's a little bit more complex. So that is for another week. It's a similar principle with adding video. Video, I will readily admit, is not something I have added to a game because I don't have a good enough website subscription to host video, because I buy for solely what I'm going to use and no more. However, I do have some code that, similarly to the sound and the visuals code. Do I have some code, or did I delete that code because I wasn't confident? I might have deleted the video code. Yeah, the videos are going to be something for a later stream, basically, because I don't want to tell you stuff that I'm not totally sure is going to work. I feel like that's fair. Again, this is just trying to put a load of different stuff into one place. My standard caveat about being a self-taught coder still applies. Something that I'm going to kind of round off with today is, it's not come up hugely so far, but it's going to come up as we start doing more things with coding, as we start tracking variables, as we start having different options for text showing on screens, as we start having code in for timers and like very hyper-specific activations and text transitions and all that kind of stuff, is the fact that I tend to use a tiny bit of code, which I'm trying to think of something that will show the real difference. Okay. You don't need to know what the code I'm putting at the top of this means. But I'm just going to do this as an example. I'm just going to put in some code, because we're starting to put in code for adding images, or for justifying or aligning text, for changing the text color, for changing its font, all that kind of bits and pieces, for adding in sound. And then if I go, hello, I am the top line of this passage. I started being like, it would be really cool if this was just a little part of like a little have a cup of tea generator, and I don't have that kind of focus. What you'll be able to see is the top line is actually halfway down the page, because, I'm sorry, this is actually, this combination of text, like this combination of font, this combination of color is not pleasant. I'm not going to be using it in future streams. But what you can see is actually the top line is halfway down the page. And that is because Twine is paying attention to all those lines of code that have come before it, and it's pushing that further down the page. There is a very simple way of dealing with this, which is what we're going to be rounding off with. And it is simply putting curvy brackets. You can see that it's changed a little bit to a very blue kind of background to it. You can always tell because it will have that blue backing to it. And then when we bring the game up, it's back at the top. Because what curvy brackets do is make game code invisible. They make sure that the audience only sees exactly what you want them to see and no space is left for the things that you don't want them to see. There's one other thing to add with this. Just gonna remember to actually still show you what I'm doing in Twine. Hello, I am the second line of this passage, because something that these curvy brackets will do is they take out unnecessary space. That is, you know, their purpose, and they're good at that, and it's useful to have. However, what it will immediately do is that, and that's the first time going through all the bits and pieces so far in these streams that you'll have seen that we've had separate lines in the passage, but we don't have separate lines when we're actually playing it, when we're looking at it from the player's perspective. There is a fix for that as well. It's a very like coding thing to be like, here's how you fix this problem, and now here's how you fix the problem that comes up because of the previous fix. But what you do is, whenever you want to have a line break, you just put a P in side, bigger than and smaller than signs, and then a /P between bigger than, larger than, a bit bigger than, smaller than signs. Gosh. You just put those around what you want to be separate. Now you'll notice that if I now open up, I've not actually had to put it around both of those lines. I only had to put it around one, because putting space around the top one forced the other one away. But if I had loads of paragraphs, I tend to default to just putting it around everything just in case, because when you get more complicated and you might be, you know, displaying another passage inside a passage or opening up more text or things like that, and embedding various things, it's just kind of, for me, it's safer, it's more simple, it's more straightforward to just put the little larger than, smaller than signs and P's around things. So I'm just going to give you one additional look at that. So that's basically because we're going to start using more code in the future streams. Next stream will probably be starting with adding variables. Sorry that we didn't, for anyone who saw kind of like tweets or updates saying like, we're going to get onto adding variables today. Nah. But we have had a little bit of a look at story style sheets and how to really customize looks and such like of the game. So that is it for today, because I can only just talk constantly for about an hour before I really have destroyed my throat. But this will be back in 2 weeks' time. If you want to watch this back, you're welcome, Troutworthy. If you want to watch any of these back, they will be on YouTube. I will just put a link for that in the chat. So on the Roll Flip stream YouTube page, all of these get put up there. There's only been 2 so far, so it's super easy to catch up. Future streams are going to cover things like having variables where you can track what players have done, what choices they've made, and customize what shows to reveal that. They're going to cover things like inventories, so that you can have people picking up items and seeing what items they've got. They're going to cover text entries, so people can put in names, details, etc., and the game will respond to that and use that further. What else is it going to cover? Timed stuff, if you want to have countdowns, if you want to have timed reveals of text, or sometimes you can use timing in Twine to give an almost like mild animation effect to visuals and to the text. So it's going to be different bits and pieces like that. Yeah, this is every 2 weeks. Every other week on a Saturday is Made Up Songs about made up people, which is a very different stream. I make up songs about people's TTRPG characters with my ukulele. So if you ever are playing in a game and you really want a song about your campaign or your party or your character, tune in and just whack a suggestion in chat and I'll make up a song. There's not much else on this channel at the moment because I have been working full-time coding for the last few months, but do keep an eye out because I am now going to start doing more streams of playtests of games that I'm working on. There's a project that I can't really say that much about that I'm very excited about that's going to be kind of an experiment in streaming, playing games, collaborative storytelling, etc. that's going to be on here, and other bits and pieces, all somehow related to kind of tabletop or games in storytelling games in some way. You're welcome, B, as well. Thank you so much for everyone who watched. I hope this was useful. I'm sorry about the few bits that I'm going to have to fill in at a later date. Like I say, I'm used to just like making up workarounds, but I don't want you to have to sit through 10 minutes of me figuring out the workaround. Yeah, have a lovely weekend. Have a lovely time, and hopefully I will see you soon again on this channel. Bye!